Hello, and it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce Anna Isabel. Um, and thank you so much, Anna, for talking to me today.
It's a pleasure, and also just to very excited about taking part in this wonderful event that you're organizing.
Well, yes, there's an event next March 13th to the 15th in Slough, which is maybe doesn't sound the most exciting of places, but it has the virtue of being easily accessible from every part of this country and other countries because it's not that far from Heathrow. And there's a lovely hotel there. And well, there we'll be for 3 days, non-stop chat over breakfast, lunch, and dinner because it's a residential event, and some wonderful speakers covering history and science. The title of the event is Questioning History and Questioning Science. And if you'd like information on this event, just email learningholidays@protonmail.com. That's very simple, learningholidays@protonmail.com, and we'll send you the details. And Anna is one of the speakers questioning science. Can you give us a very brief preview, do you think?
Yeah, questioning science, that's a very interesting concept, because I don't see myself as questioning science. I simply, I'm sharing my experience of being in this world. So there are some things that science does very well, but not everything can be replicated in a lab and therefore proven, and yet is the experience of people's lives. So I think that science, as it is being presented, so Gloria, you've disappeared. Gloria, you disappeared. Okay.
Sorry, it's because your voice disappeared.
Oh,
I pressed the
sorry.
wrong thing.
That's okay. Um, it's not for me a question of, you know, questioning science. It's more about having a different view of the world than one which restricts that which is officially acceptable to being things that can be replicated in a lab. Many people have experiences that cannot be explained in a lab because we are not lab creatures. Life is a myriad of input and experiences, and we have to sort them out. We are individuals. We experience things in a very organic way. No one person is exactly the same. Even twins are not exactly the same. So it's very difficult to apply a reductionist view of the world to everything. And when we do attempt to apply a reductionist view to the world and create rules about how everything works through this reductionist prism, we are limiting ourselves to in understanding. It means that we have now developed a very myopic view of the world. And it's not one that sits well with me. So it's not that I'm questioning science, it's that I'm questioning the way in which it is being conducted as being far too myopic, I think is a good word, and limiting and excluding big questions about existence, like consciousness, and why is it that people experience phenomena that materialist and reductionist views would reject as being real. It would mean that a substantial proportion of the population, i.e., the majority of the population, are either liars or mad. So it's things like this. And so I'm not bothered. I don't care my view of the world is officially accepted and sanctioned or not. It's mine. It's mine, and it's borne out by my experience and the experience of other people. And actually, if I'm going to be really derogatory to that way of doing science, I'm going to say proper science isn't done like that anyway. It is asking questions, theorizing, and then exploring, rather than having a set prescription due to the corruption of finances that is so prevalent in research centers, and where you have a pre-designated outcome that you're searching for and cherry picking what's going to be acceptable or not. Whereas the inquisitive mind, which is what science needs to be about, is asking, well, what about this that doesn't quite fit into that pattern? How do we explain that? And let's explore and see. Maybe I've got a theory, a hypothesis about how this works. Can I set up an experiment? Or is it a case of observation? In other words, to not dismiss experiential evidence, because experiential evidence is life. So it's an interesting thing, because I hadn't considered it before, because I don't see myself as questioning science. I actually don't really think much about it, because I can't be bothered to deal with people who are so myopic in their worldview.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's how we regard science, and much of what you've said there is so interesting, because the word science just comes from the Latin "scio," I know. So really, when we use that word science, it should be all embracing. It should include critical thinking, questioning everything. But the references to the science that you are familiar with suggest that what should be all embracing as a discipline has become myopic, insular, results determined by funding. That's the science that many of us know today, but that's not, I would suggest, where it should be at, given that the word science comes from the Latin to know. And so we are questioning science as the term is used today, and we are seeking to broaden it out, I think, and it's essential that we do this, into areas of experience, as you say.
Exactly.
And my background is in the social sciences, and which is obviously different from the physical sciences. And we do have tools that we can use to capture experience. We have qualitative methods of research, for example, in-depth interviews, and that's quite a fruitful method to use. But the physical scientists may be more predisposed to what they call positive methods of investigation, which are all number based and takes you into the kind of realms that you've been describing there.
Yeah.
So we need to expand our understanding of science. And can you tell us what you found when you expand, our field of investigation?
It's not something that I consciously do. I am not interested in that sense. It's it's not the way that I go about things.
Ah,
I'm not, but I would just go back to the point you were making, because I feel like what we need is a renaissance of science, which means a remembering of the spirit in which our ancestors embraced the world and observed and played with ideas and experimented with ideas. There is, I think, a true link between that, between creativity, intuition, and that way of being a scientist. Because and this is how so many discoveries were made. If we look at astronomy, where is the birth of astronomy? It's in what is considered to be a very dirty word from today's science perspective, astrology. What was that? That was our ancestors looking at the sky and noticing that there were certain patterns that told them what kind of a harvest they might have, and whether there were going to be floods or not, etc. This is hands-on lived experience, a body of data that would now be dismissed as wives' tales. Notice it's wives' tales. It's not husbands' tales, it's wives' tales, because women were not educated in the same way that men were. And therefore, if you're uneducated, you're behind the times, you're believing in myths and legends and things that are really not of relevance to the real world. So it's derogatory for a reason. And I'm not saying it's because it's women. I'm saying it's because they did not have access to the education that men had. And therefore, they were dismissed as being uneducated, and their experience was dismissed. This experience, which had been brought down through the ages in oral traditions, and which actually men used as much as women because of farming, etc. But so this is just a little example of the role that observation played in, as well as intuition, because intuition is about seeing patterns. And some people would dismiss this and say, well, we're predisposed to see patterns. Yes, we are. Yes. We also have discernment and the ability to discern between what's a real pattern and what's not. I think that we are, these are the people who built the pyramids, Stonehenge, and, so many other extraordinary monuments. They weren't stupid. They achieved things. And it's on their backs that we have the knowledge that we have. It's just that we've chosen to reframe everything, and it has now to be categorized in a particular way. But if our ancestors had behaved in that way, we would not be where we are right now. So that's what I'm talking about, is freeing the mind and to be intuitive and creative. So many of our great discoveries were made by mavericks. And what's maverick about them? The fact that they wanted to be in their sheds playing about, led by intuition, that lucky hunch, and the imagination, making a connection between something that they're seeing and experiencing and a possibility, and going, I wonder if. I think I wonder if is the basis of good science. And if it doesn't get corrupted by vested interests, it leads to really good things.
Well, absolutely. I wonder if, yes, the starting point for good research. And tell us about mind magic, which I think is the subject of your presentation at next March's event.
So I I called it mind magic because I'm an analytical hypnotherapist, so I am very acquainted with how the mind works. And yes, we could talk about neuroscience, but actually, I just like to talk about how the mind works in real life and how it is that in a world where there's a lot of people interested in this concept of manifestation, there's a lot of confusion, and people think of manifestation as simply making a wish. And if I wish hard enough, then it will manifest. Or, the law of attraction. How can I bring that into my life? And this is real. The law of attraction does indeed exist. And it does make manifestation possible. So why aren't we all manifesting things that we want? And so this is about understanding that there are certain things that need to be in place, that need to line up in nice little rows in order for something to manifest. And it all hinges on one thing. Is your desire aligned with what you believe? Because if you believe that you are the most unlucky person in the world, what are the odds that you're not going to win the lottery? How can you manifest money and things that you consider to be lucky and that happen to everybody else? How can you manifest it if you believe yourself to be unlucky? So we need to go back and start thinking, well, what is it that I actually believe? You know, I've led workshops on relationships in which women have said, I'm ready now. Prince Charming, here I come. And then proceed to talk about what they truly believe about men, revealing a deep belief that men are going to be controlling and abusive because that is their history. Well, what are the odds? I can guarantee that if Prince Charming walked in, they would have walked out because they wouldn't have recognized him. They would have seen him as being dull, boring, not a very attractive man, and been very interested in that mysterious man who's oozing charisma and power without realizing that actually subconsciously that's the same guy that they were married to before. They think he's so different and he's really exciting, but that charisma and power is the thing that's going to want him to control you. So, and I'm not saying that all powerful men are like this, or all men who are charismatic are like this. I'm just saying in a specific context, our subconscious has an uncanny ability, pattern matching, of repeating the same thing, which is why my clients arrive and go, why is it that this keeps happening to me? Am I cursed? No. You just don't realize that you're on a loop created by a belief, and that you have a certain expectation, which is attracting you to things that are familiar, albeit destructive, and rejecting things that are actually good for you. So let's work out what that belief is that's making what's destructive attractive and what's positive and wholesome boring in your eyes. So let's do that. Let's start. So this is what I'm going to be exploring, is how we arrive at these belief systems that are within us and very personal to us. And sometimes, yes, they're ancestral. They repeat. All the women in my family, all the men in my family. So passed down. This is the experience that we're absorbed, we're watching, we're observing. How do we break free? Because once we break free, then we are free, obviously. We are free to create. And now the manifestation is possible.
Well, I've never heard it expressed so clearly, and it makes complete sense what you're saying. You have to work on the beliefs before you can even have a chance of manifesting.
And there are different ways of doing this, but first we have to identify what that is. What is it that's standing in the way? So I led a workshop at the weekend on this very theme, and right away, one of the participants, a young woman, said, "Oh, that's making me really nervous because it means I'm never going to be able to manifest anything."
Mm.
What does that reveal? That reveals fear immediately of herself.
Mm.
That reveals a belief that she can't be trusted to not have these little gremlins in her head sabotaging.
Mm.
That's where we begin. We begin by going, why would you believe that?
Mm.
Let's explore that. And the minute we identify that, now either you can work with me, a therapist, or somebody else, a therapist to unravel that and work on it. But it's also possible through awareness, more difficult, but possible, to start orienting ourselves and re-educating ourselves about what we believe. Old me, new me. Oh, there you are. There's that voice I recognize. You're back, are you? Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe, but I'm going to do it this way. Because when we are orientating ourselves to a new way of being and a new way of thinking, it means that we are less likely to cave in to the fears of the past. And I'm not talking about suppressing them and ignoring them. There's a very different thing and far more dangerous, because you're going to end up with a backseat driver who actually does have control of the pedals and the steering wheel. And you're going, I was steering in that direction. How come I'm going in this direction? No, this is about saying, yeah, I know. The past really was rubbish, wasn't it? But maybe let's explore this. Let's see if it's new. Let's try something different. And now you're acknowledging it. That part of you that's scared knows that you're listening and hopefully is going to agree and say, okay, reluctantly, but okay. So you have to frame that in a different way as it, what if? What if? Yes, it's possible that I'm going to fall flat on my face yet again. But what if? Because what I'm doing now is different than before. Now I'm aware of this fear and I'm going to work with it. I'm going to break everything down and go, am I ready to do this bit? No? Okay, let's break it down a bit more. Am I ready to do this bit? Okay, I'll do this bit. I'll do this. So breaking everything down into stages that addresses the fear rather than going, right, just going ahead and doing it can also help. In other words, you're having to negotiate with yourself. And I think that's one way of doing it. And repetition and remembering what the mission plan is and that things can be new. Actually also looking at the past from different angles. Yeah, I can see it that way. But did anything good come of it? What resources did I acquire through that negative experience? Because I've got those now. I never had them before. What did I learn? I could so incorporating into this needs to be the belief that I can learn and I can change. And if I can learn and I can change, it means that the experiences that I have could be different. And that's important. But it's something that we don't often think or do.
So you're talking about, tell me if I've got this right, reframing the past, and learning is very much part of this, from what I'm hearing. Learning what lessons there are to be had from the past, good and bad, and then starting with a blank sheet of paper.
Yes,
And we have that chance every day of our lives, I guess.
we do. And this is the stuff of my therapy sessions, is reframing the past. And using hypnosis to do it is very potent because we tend to learn best when we are in a both relaxed and alert state of mind, which sounds like a paradox, but it means that all parts of our brain are communicating, left and right are communicating. So when we are in a very relaxed state, we are more open to suggestion and we are more open to learning something new. But we also need to be alert because in order to learn, we need to be able to process the information. So this is where being in a hypnotic state is so productive because we are both relaxed and alert. We are not asleep, contrary to popular belief. We are, that's a huge misconception of what the state of hypnosis is. When you are watching a film, you are in a state of trance. Though those frames, that number of frames per minute, makes your eyes move in a particular way, which puts you into a state of trance, which means that surround sound, dark cinema, you are taking in and absorbing like a sponge all the messages from the film, particularly because it's engaging you emotionally, etc. Well, that's what hypnosis is. It is exactly that state. It's just that we're not doing it that way. We're in your imagination and your mind, and you're the one who's doing all of that. And that's very empowering.
Quite. So the client, if you like, is the cinema,
Exactly. Yeah, it's
and
your
the
mind.
feature film is their life.
Exactly. And
Is that
so
correct?
that reframing happens more readily because
Mm.
let's put it this way, you're in the right frame of mind.
Yes, lovely.
So,
And
yeah.
um, are there people who are more easy to hypnotize than others? What
Yes.
is your experience?
Yes. Some people are afraid to let go, and that makes it hard for them to relax. They are afraid that they're going to lose control. Or a lot of people in our time are in a very tense frame of mind. In other words, they're overstimulated, they're hyper, and they actually find relaxing difficult. They're very stressed, they find relaxing difficult. So there are lots of reasons why some people find it very difficult to relax enough to get into a state of trance. However, depth of trance does not determine outcome. So unless you are using hypnosis for the control of pain, in which case it's much easier to achieve this if you are able to get into a very deep state of relaxation, i.e., trance. We can do quite a lot with a light state of trance.
Mm.
So depth of trance does not determine outcome. It determines the speed at which we can get things done and achieve things. But years ago, I had a lady who came because of back pain and she wanted to be able to manage the pain. And she found it almost impossible to relax. With practice, she got there and we got some really good results.
Ah,
So it's also about building trust with the therapist, because we know that one of the biggest factors in determining healing, whether healing takes place or not, is the relationship with the therapist. And that would include the doctor as well. So, whoever it is that you are working with, there needs to be an element of trust. And so, if you trust the person you're working with, you're going to relax better. And the outcome is going to be, more positive. So, yes, there are varying degrees to which some people can enter a state of hypnosis. And yes, it can improve with time.
can improve. And uh, I believe you have a Substack
I
yourself. Do you write about these matters in your Substack?
My Substack, the thing about me is that I write by according to what I feel inclined to express in the moment. So it's a very organic thing. I am also a psychological astrologer. It's part of my work. So I do write about astrology. I think possibly more than anything else, particularly new moon, full moon phases, because what I'm talking about is the mood of the moment. You can say the zeitgeist, whatever you want.
But it sounds wonderful. Where could people find your Substack?
So the link, I'm sure you can put the link in with this. So I write about that. I write about my dog Teddy sometimes also. It's the Mummy and Teddy adventures, because there are moments that I want to remember, and they could be small things.
Mm.
And I see it from his perspective, and this is not about, you know, putting myself into him. It's about letting him into me, so that I can see something that he sees. Or we have a shared moment where we both experience the same thing, and it's very special because we're the only two there. Like the time when a deer ran across our path. I had one reaction, he had another reaction, but there was no
Oh,
there. It was just him. We're sharing this moment together. And so I might write about that. I write about I also have a deep love of herbs and plants. I am a gardener. I grow my own food, a lot of my own food.
mm,
And so I will write about something that's in the moment in the season. So my Substack is varied, I think is what I'm saying.
mm.
You're going to
Wonder all the better.
find
Yes.
you're going to find more astrology in it than anything else, but you will also find other things that move me on my Substack.
Mm. Oh, well, I can't wait to dive into that. And yes, I will link to that. Well, I think you've given us a wonderful taste of what you'll be presenting next March. And such an important point you've shared with us today, that belief comes before manifestation.
It
Thank you
at the
so
heart
much.
of everything is belief, which is why we have so many arguments, so many beliefs.
Yes. And belief, I suppose, to some extent, turns on information. The information people have will fashion their beliefs.
Exactly.
So next March, um, um, so much information will be served up,
It will.
and there'll be so many opportunities for people to either confirm their beliefs or say, I didn't know that the Bosnian pyramids dated back 30,000 years, and that the structure that they were built with doesn't resemble any of the stones around it or any modern material. Goodness, what does that tell me about history? So, um, well, I can't wait to hear your presentation next March. And thank you so much for your time today, Anna.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be taking part in such an exciting event, um, an event that actually uses that question I like. What if?
Yes, it's the what if event. Yes.
What if? Thank you.
Thank you so much.